Hey everyone, it's Nicole again, and somehow it is halfway through April already. Not sure how that happened so quickly, but I'm going to go through and talk about all the books that I read in the first half of April. So I read a total of 12 things, 4 of which were novels, and 6 of which were single issue comics, and 2 were graphic novels. So I'm just going to go in order of when I read them. The first book that I finished reading in April was Ninefox Gambit by Yoon, which is the first book in the Machineries of Empire trilogy, and I believe this book has been nominated for the SFF awards on BookTube. I think so. If not, just a lot of people have been talking about it lately, so I wanted to give it a read. And this book is kind of hard to explain because it relies on a very complicated world that is a lot more advanced than our own. So it kind of relies on these technologies that you kind of figure out while reading the book. But basically, it's about this woman, Kel Cheris. Don't really know how to pronounce her name, but that's how I heard it in my head. And she is a commander, I think. I forgot what the ranks are in the military. There's so many of them. But basically, she does something against the rules and is punished, and her punishment is to go into this big battle. These people have kind of taken over an important structure, and she needs to get it back. And she does this she decides they need this general who is basically dead. It's just kind of his, consciousness, and she's going to have it inside of her own body. If that sounds really confusing, sorry. I'm not the best at explaining weird things. But yeah, basically it is a military science fiction book, which is not something that I've read that much, but I do love playing Mass Effect, so I think it's a genre or subgenre that I would like to look into more. And it has this complicated world system that relies on calendars, but they're not the calendars that we know in our world. It's more of like a system of physics, and basically everybody has to subscribe to these certain rules, or else the world won't function. And it is literally calendars as well, but it's kind of more than that. And then there are different groups that kind of create their own systems as a way to rebel against this very dictator-like government. And so the main character, she is obviously a part of this government, but the decision she makes kind of shows the flaws in it. And then at the beginning you think, oh, this is great, that's just how things are, they just have these calendars. And the more you read, you kind of realize that, oh, maybe this isn't that great, and maybe people should be able to think for themselves. But yeah, as a lot of people have said, this book is a little confusing at first. It basically took me halfway through the book to kind of get it. I mean, I don't completely get it, but to kind of understand what was going on. And then the second half of the book is kind of little snippets of other people in the military during the attack, and you kind of get to go into them. And then it's her with the general in her brain, and they're kind of planning the attacks. Yeah, I thought it felt very stark in the 2 parts, but I think you just really needed to figure out what this world was like before they could really go into the details of these attacks. So I don't know if there was another way it could be done, but I did enjoy it. I loved the interactions between the 2 characters, and this world was very interesting. And I think the second book's already out, so I'm gonna see if my library has that so I can read the next one, because I thought it was a lot of fun. And then the next book I read is, I think this is like the third Muse Monthly book that I read, and that's All Grown Up by Jami Attenberg. And this is, Jami Attenberg is a kind of famous novelist. She wrote The Middlesteins and Saint Maisie, which I've heard of both of those, but I haven't read them. She writes a lot about Jewish characters, a lot of times living in New York. And this one is about this woman who is turning 40 soon, and she's single and doesn't have kids, and just kind of her dating and her family life. Her dad died when she was younger from a drug addiction, and she's dealing with her own drug addiction and alcoholism. And her brother is married and has a young child who has some severe health problems. So it's kind of all of that. It's told in non-chronological order, kind of jumping around her now, her in the past, just kind of a lot of different experiences. I thought it was really interesting. Her voice was very strong, and I felt like I was really getting like a window into her life. And even though she's a character that's very different than me, I thought it was still like a very relatable book, because there's some aspects of it that you can find relatable no matter who you are. I was like not sure about this book at first, just from the cover and the description. It kind of felt like a Sex and the City sort of thing, and I was like, I don't know if that's for me. But Rincey from Rincey Reads had a really great review of it, and I was like, okay, I have to check that out, and I'm very glad I did, because I enjoyed this book a lot, and I feel like it's one that I'll definitely be rereading, especially because it's so short. And then after that, I read a very different kind of book, and that was Ash by Malinda Lo. And this is a book that I've been wanting to read for a while. I think it came out in 2009. Basically, it's a Cinderella retelling with lesbian aspects of it, which I don't really like that description of it, because the lesbian aspects didn't happen until like halfway through the book. But basically, there's this character, Ash, or like, I think her name's Aisling? I don't know how to say that. I'm horrible at pronouncing words. It's the traditional Cinderella situation where her father remarries and then dies, and then she's stuck with the stepmom and the two step-siblings. But this one, I think it's not really sure where it's based, but it's like an Irish Old English sort of feeling, and their fairies and fairy tales are those traditional like Irish and English ones that are like kind of mischievous and steal you away and stuff. And she loves fairy tales, she believes in fairies, and she has a fairy sort of god mother figure, although he's a guy, just a little guardian. And so it's about her growing up in this oppressive household, her friendship, sort of friendship with this fairy guy, and then eventually she meets a huntswoman, and kind of a friendship or more blossoms between the two. This book reminded me of the Once Upon a Time series, which I used to love to read like in middle school, which were basically just different fairy tale retellings. I feel like if I had been younger, I would have really, really enjoyed this book, but I feel like I've seen a lot of fairy tale retellings, and if they're not doing something super new and interesting, it's just like I've seen that before. And like the writing and the characters weren't super strong, I mostly wanted to read it for the lesbian aspects of it, but ultimately I feel like this book was kind of held back in that it was a fairy tale retelling. I think if it was just its own world, it would have been a lot stronger, because I kept wanting things to happen, and I'd be like, well, that's obviously not going to happen because this is a Cinderella story and they need to follow a certain storyline. And then I read a bunch of single issues of series that are ongoing, so I'm just going to list them. I read Paper Girls number 12 and number 13. Paper Girls is about some paper girls who stumble upon some weird future technology and are pulled into alternate timelines. This book feels like it's further along than 13 issues, but it's a great series. It's by Brian K. Vaughan, who does Saga. A lot of people find that this series is very slow and confusing, and they feel like they can't relate to it, but I definitely feel like if you have access to reading it as issues, or if you just get the volumes and read it one issue at a time, I think it's definitely better that way. Just because each issue is very contained, and he really takes his time to develop this world, and I think it benefits from that slower reading, which is not something that most comics do actually. Like Saga, you can read that as volumes because it's a much wider world, but I think this one really benefits from that slower reading, which is just something I wanted to let people know. And then there was new Tank Girls. So Tank Girl is about this Australian girl who drives a tank and makes mayhem, and she's got a kangaroo boyfriend and her posse of ladies. She's got Jack Girl and Sub Girl and Barney, who just kind of hangs out with them. And Alan Martin is the writer, and Jamie Hewlett is the original artist who now works with Gorillas. And there's another artist, what's his name? I think it's Parson or something. But he's been working with Alan Martin for these kind of a bunch of different mini-series that are kind of interconnected. So there's 21st Century Tank Girl, which was Tank Girl in the 21st Century. And then Tanker Gold just finished up. I read the 3rd and the 4th issues, which is just they get a bunch of gold and they spend it in different ways, and then they run out of it. And then they just started, I think, the last of the series of miniseries called Tank Girl World War Tank Girl, where they are transported into World War II and they fight Nazis, which I feel like is a requirement for all comics. You gotta be fighting Nazis at some point. So I read the first issue of that, and it was pretty good. I like the art, and all the color schemes were very World War II-esque, which I liked a lot. And then there is a new Headlopper series, issue 5, but it's kind of a new arc. Headlopper is about, I think he's like a Norse guy who runs around and chops people's heads off, and he has a witch's head that he carries around with him, and she still has a bit of her magic powers. And it's by Andrew McLean, who's a really cool artist who lives in Massachusetts. Yeah, so that one was good. I don't know too much about this new arc so far. And then I read 2 graphic novels. The first one is an ongoing series, so I can't say too much about it, but that's Harrow County Family Tree by Cullen Bunn and Tyler Crook. And this series is about a young girl, Emmy, who is kind of a reincarnation of this witch who lived in her town, and she's trying to be a good witch and use her powers to kind of help spirits move on. And in this one, a bunch of other witch entities appear and tell her more about her origins. That's kind of all I can say, but this one was really good. This might be my favorite volume. This is the 4th one. I I feel like they're taking this in a really interesting direction, and I'm excited to read more. And then the next one I showed in my March book haul, and that's Styx Angelica Folk Hero by Michael DeForge. And this is a weird book to hold, but I'll hold it somewhere. Michael DeForge is a very interesting Canadian writer. This is about this girl, Styx Angelica, who's 49, and although she does not look 49 in this book, just to say. And her father is like a politician, and she's grown up in this politician limelight her whole life, and she used to be like an Olympic runner, and she runs away to the forest to live there with the forest creatures. And it's just kind of about her living in the forest. She's not a very nice lady. And all the forest creatures that live with her, at one point Michael DeForge, the author, shows up to interview her, and there's a moose whose name is Lisa, I think Hanawin, and she's the one of the writers on BoJack Horseman. And she's a moose who really wants to be a woman. She really wants to be a lawyer. And she does. So it's just kind of a bunch of little snippets. Like, each, like, page is one story. And they do kind of interconnect and kind of form one narrative, but it's a lot of just little snippets, and I thought it was really cute. This is definitely, I think, my new favorite by Michael DeForge. And I've been reading this for, like, the past week or so. But I finally finished Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood by Trevor Noah. And Trevor Noah is a comedian. He's only like 33 or 34. It's pretty crazy. But he is the host for The Daily Show. He took over Jon Stewart. He had been a correspondent on it before, and now he's the new host. Well, not new, I think it's been like a year. But basically, this is about how Trevor Noah was literally born a crime because he has a black mom and a white dad, and he was born during apartheid, which was a time in South Africa, if you don't know, where it was illegal for black Africans and white Africans to have sex, and definitely to have children. It ended when he was about 5 years old, when Nelson Mandela was freed and became their president. But yeah, this is just kind of a bunch of stories, as it suggests, about his childhood growing up. He was a very interesting kid. He kind of never felt like he fit in because he wasn't fully black and he wasn't fully white. Alright, my camera turned off because it ran out of batteries, but to sum up, I really enjoyed this book, and I recommend it. And also, the audiobook is read by Trevor Noah. I didn't listen to it, but I recommend doing that because he's very funny, and this book is funny. So those are all of the things that I read in the first half of April, which I don't know how it's already the first half of April, but that happened somehow. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you read any of these books, or what you've read so far in April, and I'll see you soon with another video. Bye!